Well, good afternoon. It is Wednesday, July 20th, 2022. This is Raven Dana, and I am here walking between the worlds with you. This is class 3 of Listening to the Trees. So, what we're going to take a look at today, we're going to go back and forth a bit between some of the lore and mythology of trees, and then some of the science. We're going to hone in on a couple of specific trees and look a little more deeply at these 3 trees today. So sit back, get settled, and we'll have some fun looking at this. First thing I'm going to go through is how different trees in cultures that in which trees are sacred associate certain trees to qualities and to the elements: fire, earth, air, water, spirit, right? So I'm just going to list some trees for you and see if any of this resonates. See where you fall on this assessment. So the alder tree is associated with water. It turns red. The sap turns red when it's cut. So it's associated with blood. And the traits that are associated with that tree are strength, passion, and endurance. The apple tree is associated with earth and air, and the traits associated with the apple tree are beauty, generosity, and love. The ash tree, associated with earth. Now, the Norse world tree is an ash tree, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but the ash tree is associated with connection, with deep wisdom, and with surrender, with sacrificing that which you don't need for that which you do. Right? Interesting concept. The birch tree is associated with both air and fire, and it has to do, the traits associated with it are banishing evil, releasing things you don't need, purifying, and healing, generating ease and release from pain and suffering. The elder, spirit, air. It's considered the portal between worlds in some traditions, and it's a tree used often in consecration, and it has to do with the traits of individual power and calling good things to you, as well as banishing things that are not useful. The elm tree is associated with both earth and fire. And it is the traits associated with the elm are relationship, strength, prosperity, and luck. Good turns of events are associated with maples. Oak trees, earth, associated with power, protection, age, stability, growth, and strength. The oak is a mighty tree in many different traditions. Pine trees, associated with earth and air, for stamina, healing, prosperity, fertility, and release from tension. The rowan tree, associated with air and water, associated with honesty, with reversals, sudden reversals, and with protection from dark forces. And also rowan trees were sometimes planted to keep sorcerers away and to keep witches away, and so they're also used in that way. The walnut tree, associated with earth, and they represent insight, healing, focus, mental clarity, and abundance. All right. The last time we talked about the author Diana Kroger, and this is a quote from the book not Listening to the Trees, Speaking for the Trees. This is a quote from the book Speaking for the Trees. I was told that sacred and science do not mix. I was told that scientists should know better than to trust the knowledge and the practices of the indigenous peoples. But science at its best proves to the skeptic the how of what works, behind why their wisdom needs to be both respected and protected. So I'm putting that out to you as the way I view the relationship between science and myth, science and spirituality, that rather than abandon the old ways or pretend that there's nothing to them. That the job of science is to figure out how certain things do what they do, to give the answer to the question, why should I use that remedy? Well, because here's the science behind it. And even in cases where you don't have the science yet, many times the remedy is still going to work, which isn't saying carte blanche, just deal with anything that anybody tells you ever. What it is saying, though, is to be aware and attentive to the fact that their grandmas with their remedies, that is very often something that eventually gets proven by science. So be respectful of that, be attentive to that, because we can learn a lot by listening to the indigenous cultures and the things that they tell us about healing, about connection, about our place in the larger world. Okay, let's go back to that ash tree for a moment. In the Old Norse, the ash tree is considered to be the world tree, and I can't pronounce it, it's Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil. It's not my wheelhouse. But the world tree in the Norse mythology is a giant ash tree that supports the universe. And one of the roots of the ash tree goes down deep into the other underworld, into the below worlds. The second root of the ash tree goes to the land where the giants live. And the third root of the ash tree is grounded in Asgard, the home of the gods. So beneath the giant tree, there are also 3 wells. There's the well of fate, from which the tree is watered by the fates. There is the well called the roaring kettle, which is where a monster lives. And there is also Mimir's well, which is the source of universal wisdom. Now, this is the well for which Odin gave up an eye, right, to drink from the waters of wisdom in that well, which is what gave him his insight, his second sight. So there are other cultures that have world trees. Many indigenous cultures also do. And in the Celtic world, the Celtic pantheon, the world tree is represented by an oak. So again, this is something common to see the tree as that to exist between the worlds, connecting the worlds, the world below, the world on the surface of the earth, and the world above, right? So it's the bridge between spiritual and purely physical. So I just find it fascinating. All right. We're going to talk about a very interesting tree today. From the Songs of Trees by Haskell. He has a section that's devoted to the palm tree. Now, when I was a kid, I drew lots of palm trees. I can't even tell you why. I grew up in Yonkers, New York. Who sees palm trees in New York? Nobody, all right? I don't know why I was so attached to palm trees or drawing them, but I can tell you that I felt a deep affinity for palm trees. And as a kid, I used to have dreams about being on a sandy shore with palm trees and being in what I think now, looking back at those dreams, it was probably looked like Egypt. It looks like Egypt to me now, but palm trees were a thing. Well, they're very, very unique in the kingdom of trees. Palm trees, well, of course, they are rooted in the sand. They do a whole different kind of thing to survive. Palm trees, when the seed first sprouts, instead of coming up like seeds normally do, the palm tree will send its first tendril down deep into the ground, a whole meter before it turns up and faces the sky. When that turn occurs and it pops through the surface, then it will grow fronds. Now, palm trees can maintain that saxophone shape, that hook shape, for a very long time, some species as much as 60 years before the trunk emerges. When the trunk does emerge and the tree begins to grow, the trunk doesn't get bigger and bigger and bigger like many other trees do, or most other trees do. It actually just gets taller and taller. So, and there's a reason for that. It's conducive to survival because palm trees have to endure things that no other tree has to endure. They are a symbol in many cultures of tenacity and renewal for that reason. They have to deal with salt water, which robs their roots and their leaves of moisture. They have to deal with incoming tides, tropical storms, periods of severe drought, and not to mention that because they're largely going to be the tallest things or the only tall things by the water's edge, they're going to get struck by lightning a fair amount of the time. So the palm is sacred in many different traditions, and especially in the region of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Here are some examples. In Islam, the palm tree is related to rest, to invitation, and to hospitality. In Assyria, it is the sacred tree of Ishtar and bestows blessings. In Mesopotamia, the palm represents fertility. In Egypt, long life and renewal. In Greece, this tree is called the phoenix, and it has to do with restoration. Now, it's called the phoenix for a reason, because some palm trees, when they're struck by lightning, while the canopy may explode and be destroyed, while the fronds may be gone, if the lightning doesn't vaporize the water in the trunk, then the trunk will in fact regenerate. It will grow new fronds and the tree will continue to live. So, right, the phoenix. And in both Judaism and Christianity, the palm tree represents success and victory and the overcoming of things. So like I said, the palm tree story is one of tenacity because its whole life is in the sand. Fallen fronds, by the way, which is interesting. I don't know how familiar you are with palm trees, but fallen fronds, if you walk on them, are not soft. They're hard, they're pretty substantial. And they're sturdy and they're stiff. The rain falling on a palm tree, rather than the little pitter-patter we tend to hear on leaves of other types of trees, it sounds more like pebbles on a roof, right? It's more because the palm fronds are, again, they're special. They're made in a special way. And first of all, going back to that trunk of the tree, the trunk has more living cells than a regular tree. A regular tree has the outer bark and then the inner, and then the living cells are just up the center of the trunk of a tree. But the palm trees, because of the necessity to stay alive, they suck water up through these worm size, right? Their roots are like worm size, and there's thousands of them. It helps to stabilize the tree in the sand, but it also helps to collect water. So a palm tree will suck up a large amount of rainwater in a short period of time and store that water in the trunk of the tree. So a palm tree can hold a tremendous amount of water, about 25 liters of water for every meter, so about a yard. For about every yard of trunk, it has 25 liters of water that it can store. And this is one reason why a palm tree can be sustained in a drought. And it's also why the palm tree can sometimes withstand a lightning strike and still regenerate itself. Again, assuming that all the water in the trunk is not vaporized by the lightning strike. So the water is conductive, which is one reason why the palm trees essentially end up acting like lightning rods. The other tree that is famously hit often by lightning is the oak, both for its size and also its water content. But the palm trees, again, they're very special. So this is a very interesting thing. In the palm fronds, there are silica secreting cells. Now, you know what silica is. It's sand, right? It's like sand. And these silica secreting cells build long threads throughout the palm fronds, which makes them stiff and sturdy. And the leaf then, the palm frond itself, because it's essentially got threads of sand, of silica running through it, are like part stone, okay? Each frond is supported by about a meter of stalk. And the stalk, even though it's not particularly large, it is as strong as a strut of lumber. It's very, very strong. The reinforcing cells, which by the way are called lignin, are a botanist's nightmare because of the silica, because of the cells, and when a botanist tries to dissect or shave down to investigate, to look at cells, the palm fronds will often break their knives, break their equipment, because this is truly how strong they are. So again, palm trees are remarkable. They can withstand tremendous things, winds and drought and severe temperature, even a lightning strike. So if you have a love of palm trees, there might be something to that for you. Maybe you've had a life that's been a little tumultuous, and you have the resilience and the tenacity of a palm tree. And so I since I've read all this information about palm trees, I decided that it's going to be a great blessing to give people from now on. May you have the tenacity of a palm tree. All right, so palm trees, quite the remarkable beings. All right, now I'm going to take us back to the book To Speak for the Trees by Kroger. And we're going to take a look at two more trees from the Ogham alphabet. The hazel, which in that alphabet is called Calls, C-O-L-I. It's for the letter C. Now, this is a favorite tree of dowsers. I don't know if you've ever met somebody that's a dowser, but I have, and it's quite remarkable. So dowsers will often use a hazel branch and sometimes a willow branch to douse for things. And what they do is they take a branch and they get one that's in a Y shape, and they hold the branch, and they hold the branch, like a wishbone. They hold the two ends of the branch, and that end that's pointing out will point down, will pull towards the ground when they come close to what they're looking for, which is usually water. So, you may or may not have any experience with that or belief in that, but I'm here to tell you that I know people who can do it really well, and it's fascinating. In fact, in this book, Diana talks about her farm where she has, the trees, and she works on, the restoring of the trees that are being wiped out and that kind of thing. And when she first built her farm, she called somebody to come look for a well, to dig her well. And the person who came to dig the well was also a dowser. So he actually walked the property. She walked with him. It talks about it in the book, where she sees the stick move towards the ground, and he says, "This is going to be a great well. There's plenty of water here." And without a second thought, he brought out the equipment, he dug in that spot, and indeed, there was a great well. So it's a great story, and it's a true story. All right. So the Greeks used the fresh bark of the hazel to write on, to store information on. And sometimes they pounded it flat to make it a bit more like papyrus. But it was a common tree bark that was used for writing. There's also a very powerful medicine that comes from the hazel tree, and it's still used today. It's called paclitaxel. It is an anti-proliferation chemical, and what that means is that it prevents cancer cells from replicating. So it is actually currently being used in cancer treatments as a type of chemotherapy. It's sold under the brand name Taxol. It's, like I said, you can look this up. And it treats a number of different types of cancers, which includes ovarian cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, sarcoma, cervical cancer, and pancreatic cancer. It is administered by injection, right? So when I read this, it made me think of last week's class and the tree that that produces medicine that allows drugs like this to work more effectively at lower doses, because obviously this drug does a marvelous thing, and if it can work at a lower dose and be less disruptive to your system, that's even better, right? It's very, very cool thing. Okay, after the last ice age, the hazel tree, because it was a low-lying tree, scientists found tremendous amounts of pollen in the soil and the subsoil. So they're clear that after the last ice age, the hazel tree was probably the first species of trees that grew and proliferated. And the ground was loaded, like I said, with hazel pollen. The Celts love the hazel. Many cultures love hazelnuts. And the tree is used in many cultures as a source of food and writing and medicine. And Irish folklore and mythology is saturated with tributes to these trees. According to Celtic mythology, the hazel tree was the first creation on earth. And it's interesting because really that's what science is saying, that after the last ice age, the hazel was the first tree to proliferate. Now, the first Irish hazel tree, which is said to have grown upon the well of wisdom, was said to have held all the knowledge in the universe. When a salmon in the well ate the nuts that fell from the hazel tree, it obtained the knowledge of the universe and became the salmon of knowledge that could then pass that wisdom temporarily onto anyone who ate the salmon. You would have the information as long as the salmon stayed in your system, but once it moved through and saw its way out, the knowledge went with it. So if you didn't write down the wisdom and insight you got when you ate the salmon, you were, as they say, shit out of luck. So it's fascinating. In fact, the synchronicity of this, I just finished reading a fiction book that specifically talked about a woman who discovered her Druidic heritage and was told to go to the river and eat the salmon of wisdom and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I just finished that book 2 days ago, and here this is about the hazel tree. So I found it fascinating and a lovely synchronicity. Now, the legend goes that the first man to eat the salmon would then have all the knowledge passed on to them. Well, again, the tradition's a little different in some cultures, even some of the Celtic cultures, that, like I said, if you eat the salmon, you get the wisdom temporarily, and then if you don't catch it, well, it moves on. All right, so that is the marvelous hazel tree. And this is the symbol for the hazel tree, that straight line with 4 lines stretching out from it. Okay, now we're going to move on to one of my favorite trees, which is the oak, the letter D, or dare, D-A-I-R. Now, botanically, the oak is really the king of the tree world. Each tree is a landscape for hosting insects, butterflies, and other pollinators. Oak trees can live over 1,000 years, and they can dominate a landscape. They can easily communicate with trees over a vast distance. Oak trees also do something really interesting. As they age, as they grow, their branches will bend down and then back up again. So where an oak tree's lower branches touch the ground, it will also root again. So there can be roots from the lower branches going down into the ground from the tree as it ages. Like I said, they can be ancient trees. The Irish oak is considered to be the great healing tree of the Druidic physicians. Able to live over 1,000 years old, the oak trees were considered to be the magic keepers and the information keepers. And not only do their branches dip and climb up again, but that makes them that's another reason why they are considered to be a bridge between the worlds. On the branches of ancient oaks, if you remember, we talked about rainforests in one of the classes, and the way certain types of trees in the rainforest actually get dirt layered on their branches because of the way the atmosphere works in the rainforest. Well, because oak trees can be ancient, a similar thing occurs. On the branches of ancient oaks, cortical cells and periderm cells will make compost. And like the trees in the rainforest, these ancient oaks will then have a layer of soil on the mid branches that will host many species of ferns and mosses. In fact, the songbird, the missel thrush, deposits seeds on those branches in that soil, and that paves the way for the growth of mistletoe. Mistletoe being another potent magical herb of the Druid tradition. Now, another thing about oak trees is that in the ancient oaks, when they get heavy and they're in the wind, when the wind torques the tree, when the branches turn in the wind, the trunk produces something called black water. Right? I had never heard of this, so I found this particularly fascinating. So when they're torqued by the wind, this black water is released, it forms. It is a very, very potent molecule, and it is still used today to treat burns and burn wards. The black water is actually a polymer called gallotannin. Right? So, I mean, to me, again, I go back to the question, how did the ancients learn these things? And when you look at the history and you look at the only answer that I've ever been given is that that nature tells them, that the trees tell them that we have lost or ignored or denied a way of communicating directly with our brothers and sisters, with our siblings in the natural world, where the information is shared directly. So today, of course, science has to figure it out. They take the gallotannins and they examine them and explore how it is they do what they do. But again, back when it was when the black water was used for burns, somewhere along the line, somebody had to figure out that that's what it was for. So I find that really such a significant and interesting piece of the puzzle. If you've ever read the book, The Garden at Findhorn, all right, they talk about communication with the plant world. So if you like the tree class and you're interested in that subject, I would encourage you to go to the Findhorn Garden website and maybe look at some of their material, because it does deal specifically with communication with the direct communication with the plant world. Okay. All right, back to the ancient oak. To the Greeks, Romans, Celts, Slavs, and Teutonic tribes, the oak was the foremost among the venerated trees. In each case, it was associated with the prime deity in their pantheon. The oak was sacred to Zeus, Jupiter, Dagda, Perun, and Thor. Each of these had dominion over rain, thunder, and lightning. Fascinating, right? That the oak tree is affiliated with storms, thunder, and lightning. Now, one of the reasons is because of the tree's high water content and its height, that it becomes a lightning attractor. Okay. So oak trees have also been a source of food for many cultures, including Native Americans. The indigenous North Americans have used and still use acorns in soups, in porridges, grind it into flour, use it for bread making. So there are even places where you can buy acorn flour and acorns for eating. If this is something, if you have an affinity for the oak tree, I would encourage you to do that, to look up something about acorns and oaks, and maybe try something that you've never tried before, eating acorns using oak flour, acorn flour. And I love the symbol of the acorn, because there are so many acorns, and it's not like every acorn becomes an oak tree. So the soil has to be right, the temperature things have to be right for an oak tree to actually grow. And again, it's a symbol of longevity, of power, of strength, and of being of living between the worlds, having that alliance with storms and rain and thunder. I just love that. All right, and I'm going to show you what the oak tree symbol looks like. There it is. See it? Straight line with two little lines coming off it. All right. Here is our practice for this week. That's as far as I'm going to take the tree conversation for today. But I'm going to give you a very interesting practice. And that practice is, what I'd like you to do is go find a stick, or maybe even a few leaves and a stick, from a tree that you particularly like. I want you to carry it with you for a couple of days, maybe 2 days. Carry it everywhere. Put it in your car, put it by your table when you sit, put it by your bed when you sleep. Then after you carry it around and really become familiar with the tree, I want you to sit quietly. Ask the spirit of the tree, the dryad, for a story or a blessing. Now, I know, it might sound a little crazy to you. Do it anyway. Sit quietly. Let go of any expectations. Close your eyes and follow that tree in your mind's eye. Follow the stick back to the tree where you found it, right? Just follow it back to the source. And see what happens. Just see what happens. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just hold the stick, close your eyes, go back in your mind with the stick to the tree it came from, and ask, do you have something for me? Can you tell me a story or give me a blessing? And see what happens. Don't overthink it. Just let yourself be in that experience. Now, after you've done that, I would suggest you go to the tree and say thanks. Even if you got nothing, at least you opened a line of communication with your thinking pattern, right? Maybe even if you got something cool, if you got something that you found to be particularly interesting or enlightening, go leave a gift. Leave a little water for the tree, or leave a handful of nuts for the squirrels that live in the tree, right? In other words, to go back and give that tree your blessing. That's what I recommend. Feel free, please, to share your results with me. And if you wish, with your permission, I'll share your stories with the group next time. So again, the week 3 practice, I'm going to say it again, to find a stick that calls to you from a particular kind of tree, carry it with you for a few days, everywhere. Then sit quietly and ask the spirit of the tree for a story or a blessing by going back in your mind to the tree that the stick came from, and see what happens. After you do that, go back to the tree, say thanks, leave a blessing, give the tree a blessing, your blessing, and if you wish to leave an offering, do so. All right, so that is our tree class for today. Now, I am going to do a meditation with you, but tomorrow I'm going to post several meditations that will be tree meditations that will be separate and distinct from class, so that you can go back and do a tree meditation separately without having to watch the entire class. So I'll probably post, I'll probably post 3 tomorrow. And for today, we're going to go ahead and enter into a tree journey right now. So get yourself into a comfortable position and relax. Allow yourself to bring your attention to your breath and to feel the weight of your body comfortably resting on the surface beneath you. Close your eyes. And as you breathe, feel the way your breath flows effortlessly in and out of your body, rising up on the inhale and drifting down on the exhale. Allow yourself to relax a little more with every exhale, relaxing your face, letting your shoulders drop away from your ears, softening your belly. Relax. Feel the gentle tug of gravity and allow yourself to surrender to that feeling, softening down, feeling heavy and relaxed. And as you breathe, rising up on the inhale and drifting down on the exhale, your mind becomes quiet, still. And in that space between thoughts, images begin to rise. And you find yourself walking up a hillside and seeing a grove of trees laid out before you. The sun is bright and hot, and the trees are beautiful. You walk among them and realize they are olive trees. And you reach up and touch the olives, the fruits, some bright green, others beginning to ripen and darken. The scent is remarkable, and the whispering of the leaves is soothing, calming. And you think about olive trees, peace, extending an olive branch. You think about olive oil and the many, many uses, from massage to your food, and all the good and healing properties. And you walk through the trees, touching them as you pass, letting your palm embrace the wood of the tree. You find a particular tree among them that you feel drawn toward. Maybe it's the symmetry or its age. Maybe it's how much fruit it bears or the color of the bark. But there's something for you about this tree, and you go over to it and you gaze up into the canopy of the tree, seeing birds, olives, the leaves with sunlight through them like stained glass, and it is beautiful. And you feel deeply and profoundly at peace. You understand in this moment in a way that your mind can't describe that the essence of the olive tree is peace, healing, reconciliation. You can feel the personality of this tree wrapping itself around you, like a feeling of easing of your burdens, a feeling of relief, a feeling that removes any pain in your mind, that removes any chaotic thoughts, that relieves any tension in your body. And you sit down and lean your back against the trunk of the tree, feeling delighted, grateful, feeling this sense of being surrounded by sacred beings in a sacred place, communicating with each other and the world in a spectacular way that few of us ever really recognize. And you lean back against the tree like you might an old friend snuggling down for a nap. And just then, a ripe olive falls and lands plop right in your lap. And you smile up at the tree and hold that olive in your palm, and you close your eyes. Slowly you bring your attention back to your breath, and you feel the history of this place. You can feel the memory of the trees echoing back generations. All the families these trees have fed, all the activities they have seen, all the healing they have participated in. And you breathe. You listen to the whispering of the trees, And you gently breathe your way back, breath by breath, gently returning to the moment, to your body, to the room in which you rest. Slowly coming back to yourself, filling yourself with that deep awareness of connection and the feeling of peace and healing, the feeling of being grounded. You come back all the way now and allow your eyes to open. Okay. I hope you enjoyed our journey together. And I don't know, go make yourself a salad with some olive oil, or go rub a little olive oil on your skin if you have some. And if you're extra interested, you can look up olive trees and see what they have to say to you. Well, thank you so much for being with me today. I'll see you next week for week 4, our final class. And I will post some separate independent journeys about trees tomorrow. So if you have anything to say or want to report your experiences, please feel free to do so. I welcome your input and and anything you have to say. I welcome it. So have a lovely day. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate you for being here. And once again, may the trees be with you.